Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of Thriving with Rachel and Dr. Lou. I don't know about you guys, but for us it's been quite a week or so.
Sorry we missed you last week.
Yeah, we had a lot of things going on. My father, Rachel's grandfather, passed away. My other daughter, Rachel's sister, had a baby. So we had a lot of things going on last week, and it's been quite an emotional roller coaster.
To say the least, yeah.
Wasn't sure if I was coming or going many times. This week we're settling down a little bit, trying to get back into our routine of things and back to daily life. But through this past week, one of the things that we've gotten a lot of feedback on, questions about, is how do you know when you're working, when things are working in the way you want to? And you know, I often equate this to the idea that when we want to start a diet, you know, we go on our diet and then, you know, within a few days we keep looking at the scale and we haven't lost any weight yet. Mm-hmm. All right, it's not working.
Right.
Or we go to the gym and, you know, we're really sore after a workout, but we come back and we don't feel buff yet.
Right. Or the weight's not gone, or
yeah.
I still don't fit in those pants. Yeah.
So it's the idea of how do we decide and define and understand when we're working, and is whatever we're doing working? And so that kind of brought up the whole continuum concept, which I know you and I spend a lot of time talking about, something I've written about, and something that is really just a theme, like a thread through all of the idea of thriving and how do you thrive. Without an understanding of the continuum, you really don't know where you are. So we often judge ourselves inaccurately.
That's what I was going to say. I think we end up placing a lot of judgment. Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Am I moving forward fast enough? You know, are we, you know, especially with last week, it was like, am I sad? Am I happy? Like there was a really sad thing going on and a really happy thing going on. And it's really hard to navigate your emotions, and especially when we can't control them. And it's like, well, am I putting too much effort into one thing? Am I distracting myself from the sad thing by looking at the good thing? And, you know, we question ourselves a lot. And I think that then brings up a lot of judgment of am I doing it well enough or good enough or whatever it might be. And I think a lot of times the awareness is good, but the judgment takes away from the experience that we're having, and I think doesn't allow ourselves to be present with it. And so the continuum concept, which I guess you created that, right, in your most recent book?
Yeah, I don't know anybody else who's written about it, but
yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people have talked about some version of it, but yes.
Yeah, but this idea that, you know, our lives are on a continuum. The experiences that we have are based on a continuum. I don't know, do you think I should write this out at the same time?
Yeah.
So the idea that we're not necessarily moving forward or backwards as if we're on a timeline, but we want to look at our experiences and our life as if we are doing things that are more or less helpful, is the idea, as opposed to good or bad or right or wrong. So this concept takes out the judgment, like Lou was talking about. So I just want to kind of draw this idea on the board. Except I don't have the best handwriting. See, everyone says I should have been a doctor because of my handwriting, not because I'm smart enough for it. But so we have our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors, which I know we've talked about in the past, that makes up an experience. And the idea is that we want to look at how we think, feel, and behave on a continuum, not a timeline of moving forward or backwards. So it's the idea that there's ebbs and flows in life that go in a less helpful or more helpful direction. And the only way that we move towards more helpful or less helpful is by the things that we control. So the things that we directly control is what we do, so our behaviors, and our intentional thought. And the ebbs and flows in life are the things that are out of our direct control. So that might be other people, that would be our past and our future, that would be our circumstances or the situation, that would be our automatic thought, and that would be our feelings. So this is a list of things that are out of our direct control, meaning we can't just snap our fingers, change it. So for instance, last week for us, when you said emotional roller coaster, I think that's exactly what it was. There was a mixture of emotions that were just kind of happening. There was grief, there was excitement, there was sadness, it was, you know, a lot of different things going on, a lot of automatic thoughts associated with that around an experience, right? Around a circumstance that was happening, you know, a death, a birth, there were, you know, people coming into town, like, so there was a lot going on with that circumstances, things that have now happened in the past, things that had to do with other people. These things created ebbs and flows in life that a lot of us would judge ourselves on sometimes, as if, you know, I shouldn't be feeling this way, or I should be doing more, or this person isn't responding the way that I wanted, so I'm failing. And a lot of that can be going on, which is the ebbs and flows, so the ups and downs in life, versus what we did. How did we respond? Which is behavior and intentional thought, which can then be judged or perceived as moving in a more helpful or a less helpful direction. And the reason...
And we kind of define help. You know,
Right.
We're the ones who are identifying, is this getting us towards where we want to be? Is it getting us to thriving? But also keeping in mind context. You know, one of the things that's really important in this idea of the continuum is recognizing, where are we today? We might want to be thriving all the time. But as you pointed out, Rachel, many things happen in life that create these ebbs and flows. And so we have to respond to them as best we can. And sometimes that may feel like we're stalled. Sometimes it may feel like we're stuck. It may feel like we can't thrive. And we're here to tell you that you can. Through last week, I would say we still thrived. I felt that even though I was sad, I was crying at times, I was happy at times, I felt thriving in the fact that I was still able to recognize where life fits in that week. You know, the idea that somebody passes is extremely sad, especially if you're very close to that person. But it's part of life, right? If it happens and it's a shock, or if you're kind of preparing for it, either way, it's something that you can kind of expect in some ways, right? Like, you know somebody's going to die at some point in your life, and you're going to have to experience that. Just like somebody's going to have a baby, and we're going to experience that. Lots of things that are outside of our control happen to us, and we have to keep in mind that how we judge ourselves is really based on our perceptions of things, plus our past. And one of the things that you were asking about or describing is this ebbs and flows, and I started thinking about when people ask me, how you doing?
In what context?
Yeah, like a lot of times I felt like I was saying, I'm okay. You know, I was just kind of treading water, if you will. Was that thriving? I guess for the moment, yeah, you know, because I felt like I was still able to move. I was still able to get up. I was still able to go and interact with people. Now,
but it depends on what you focused on, though, right? Because
absolutely.
you know, I got asked that question too, like how are things going? And I would say something along the lines of, well, considering the circumstances, I'm doing pretty well. And the reason I said that wasn't because I wasn't sad. If I thought about it too long, like you know, I had people ask me, and I was just completely broke down. But there were other times where I was able to kind of process it, and the reason was I was focusing on the things that I did. You know, I was focusing. You know, if I focused on the sad events of last Monday, it was more so, well, considering the circumstance, I was so happy and blessed that I was able to, see him the night before, and I made it there before he passed away. You know, like there were things that I was honing in on that were really empowering. Things that I did that were my behaviors and where I was putting my intentions made that experience better. If you just asked me, how you doing, and all I focused on was the fact that he wasn't here, it would be a completely different question. And I think that's what led to breaking down on those other times, because my instant thought wasn't, all the good things that had happened. It was the fact that he's not here, right?
Which is okay.
Right.
Right? Like, I think sometimes we do that. We might break down, and then we judge ourselves as we're not handling it.
Right.
We're not doing okay. But that's what keeping it in context really is talking about, is that this is sad. Right. You should cry. Like, you should be upset. Like, if I stepped on your toe, you'll say, ow. Like, that's expected. right? So give yourselves the same grace and same understanding that if you're struggling, there's reasons, and it's still okay.
And I think that's another thing I want to highlight on the continuum concept is this idea that ebbs and flows are on both sides, right? Ebbs and flows are going to occur whether you're doing something that's more helpful or less helpful. So if I'm doing something like crying, or I'm thinking about and reminiscing intentionally about, things that are sad or happy, if they're sad, I might feel like I'm more in that low. I might feel kind of crappy, I might automatically be thinking about things that make me feel like I'm spiraling or just in a stuck spot. That's still more helpful. It's in line with my values. I value feeling connected to family. I value allowing myself to experience things. And so in that, I might not feel great, but I'm still reinforcing what I value. Same on the other end of the continuum. For instance, I might, stay in bed longer when I'm struggling and not get up, which is not in line with my values. My value is to be productive, stick to a schedule, feel like I'm doing things with my day. And so I might stay in bed longer, which is not in line with my values, less helpful, but I might be feeling pretty good, relieved, if you will, because I didn't have to get out of bed for at least 5 more minutes, 1 more hour, whatever it might be. So recognizing on either end, it might not be as black and white as we think. Just because you're doing something that's helpful for you, like setting a boundary, eating healthy food, going to the gym in the morning, whatever it might be, you might be doing things that are helpful, but it might be really hard. Right?
Yeah.
Getting up really early, setting a boundary with somebody you've never done that with, that's going to be uncomfortable, but it's not indicative of it not being helpful.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely. And I think it's important to recognize that those can change day to day or even throughout the day. The idea that if we're doing something that's less helpful, it's still okay because we can always do something else that is more helpful.
Once you notice that it's not. If we take the judgment out.
Yeah.
Because I think that's where we get stuck. We're really aware, which is great, but if you're aware and then you don't do anything with the awareness, I just feel like crap then, and I'm just sitting in it and dwelling in it. If we recognize though, hey, what I've been doing for the last hour, the last week, whatever, isn't in line with what I value, notice it, and then ask myself, okay, well, what do I want to do? Or what do I feel like I can do in this moment to reinforce the value, right? And that pivot might be uncomfortable, but asking the question, I think, is important.
And there again, what do I want to do often gets pulled down in some ways by our feelings. Like last week, I probably wanted to exercise or eat better. But I didn't.
I was going to say, how much pasta did
oh my gosh. I mean, it was wonderful to have the family and friends support who gave us all this food and flowers and cookies and cakes and, and I, of course, had to eat some of it.
It's in memory, we're supporting.
Absolutely. Pop would have wanted that.
He would, yeah.
So, again, keeping it in context, I recognize that, last week I was going to do that. I gave myself the permission, if you will, and I said, it's okay. That was the judgment.
Right.
Yet, if I can do that day to day, week to week, I can choose this week to get back on track. I can choose this week to maybe not eat cake every night.
Or even today.
Or even today, just right now. And I think that's important. That goes back to our mindset, goes back to awareness, and what do we want to do? As I started saying though, our feelings sometimes pull us down because we will say, I want to do this, but then feel like we can't.
Right.
And that feeling is actually a thought, because your feeling is saying, I can't do something.
I feel
That's
like
where
I can't. Yeah, it's not an emotion.
Yeah, I'd prefer this to be easier.
Right.
And if it was, then it would be much easier to choose to do it.
Right.
At the same time, if this is what I want, going back to your values point, recognizing what are your values, what's important to you, how do you want to be, regardless of the things that are outside of our control, that's where we need to make those decisions and then come up with a plan. Well, what is it that it needs to look like?
Right.
What are the things that I need to be doing? What are the behaviors and intentional thoughts that I would need to be having that would make things more helpful and allowing me to go up the continuum and continue to thrive?
Mm-hmm. Right. And not letting these things that are out of our direct control dictate and make that the assessment on whether or not we're progressing or doing the right thing. Because I think that's the key piece to this, is the judgment could be actually a helpful awareness of judgment, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily kicking me, but if you notice that automatically you're kicking yourself, or feedback you get from other people is more negative, and you're doing this wrong, which is so hard to navigate away from if that's the feedback you're getting, the thing that you fear the most is being told to you. Noticing that that's not what has to dictate whether or not it's right or whether or not it's in line with my values. Always remember that any type of change, good or bad, packing for a vacation or failing a test and having to study more, any transition or change is uncomfortable. And to remember that that's not necessarily indicative of if it's the best or if it's in line with values. So really using this to kind of notice that and help you navigate it, as opposed to I guess leaving it at the judgment and awareness and just staying there.
Yeah.
Would probably be what I advise.
So things that we talked about today. The continuum concept. Notice there's ebbs and flows to life. There are many things that are outside of our control, such as what others say or do, the past and the future, circumstances that we're currently in, our automatic thought, our feelings, and several other things. But also the things that are in our control. Whether you believe it or not, we can control our behavior and our intentional thoughts. And recognizing that with the ebbs and flows comes a sense of mindfulness and awareness of how we're doing within the context of the situation, and allowing ourselves to decide based on our values what it is that we want, and then how we want to do that. And using family and friends as support, recognizing the things that we've done in the past, how we've been able to thrive, and how it's felt, all support being able to continue to move up that continuum concept.
And maybe going back to the basics of what we talked about several weeks ago, is maybe setting alarms and reminders to check in with yourself, to work on this awareness, to notice, where are you putting your energy? Are you putting it towards manipulating and changing the things that aren't in your direct control? Or are you prompting yourself around things that you could control to help your experience be better? So things to be working on for the next week or so.
Yeah, and just a couple more comments. When you do spend too much time on the things that are outside of your control, you'll notice that you'll tend to feel more frustrated, more down, more sad, more disappointed in yourself, maybe angry. And so those are, again, red flags or triggers that can help you to recognize that if that's how you're feeling, there's a good chance we're over here. And if that's true, using our mindfulness, our awareness to the situation and what we're doing, we can then choose the behaviors and the intentional thoughts that we want to focus on to get us moving back into the direction that we want to go. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. Hope that you have a great week. We will see you next week.
Yes. Have a good one.